All information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not consider your individual circumstances. You should consider the appropriateness of this information with regards to your individual objectives, financial situation, and needs. Welcome to Sharing More Than the Sheets, a podcast to help you and your partner make better financial and lifestyle decisions so that you can both focus on the things that you love. I'm your host, Michael Khouri, financial planner, green thumb, husband, and just dad. This episode is part of a health series where I invite experts from the health industry to come and talk about things that we should all be aware of and most likely do ourselves. I believe that people treat their money just like they treat their health, and that our greatest asset is our health, both physically and mentally. I hope you get something out of it and share the episode with any friends or family that may benefit. As part of this series, we're talking about many different facets of the human body. And today, I really wanted to focus on the structure and the movement of the human body. To me, this is probably one of the most important parts of the human body because it's literally the skeleton. It's the things that move. It's the things that allow us to be humans. And I thought, you know what? Let's talk to a physiotherapist. So I've invited Nick Wilson, a very good friend of mine that is the owner of Camp Hill Physiotherapy and Exercise Centre, to be on the show. Nick, thank you so much for joining us.
Morning, Michael. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
It's mate, it's a pleasure to have you on. Like, it's first of all, I know how busy you are, and second of all, so thank you for making the time. And second of all, it's to me, this is a big thing because, you know, I speak to clients, I speak to friends all the time that, you know, need to see a physio, want to see a physio. Oh, do you know a good physiotherapist? And I also talk to a lot of people that probably need to see a physiotherapist and don't actually go and see a physiotherapist. So I'm hoping that this episode is going to help both of those camps. But I guess could we probably start with you just maybe talking about what a physiotherapist is, or probably clarifying what a physiotherapist is, because I'm sure some people have different ideas of what a physiotherapist is, especially those that haven't seen one before.
Yeah, of course, Michael. It's one where we sort of like to think that our profession focuses on the human body and the movement. So a lot of the reason why people would see a physiotherapist would be if usually it's impacting their life physically. So if someone's got a particular hobby or activity that they really like to do, they might find that they're not able to do that due to pain, due to tightness or restriction. So that would probably be the main reason someone would see a physiotherapist and how we would describe the profession. But within physio, there's a lot of different umbrellas. So there's a lot of actual specialties within physio. So most people probably know a physiotherapist as what we'd call musculoskeletal physiotherapy, which is the skeletal, the bones, the muscles, the tendons, and the joints. However, the physio profession also does help with other systems in the body. So what we call the vestibular system, or the inner ear. So some people might be getting balance issues or vertigo, and they don't realize that physio can actually help with certain exercises to help with the balance in the inner ear and help with some vertigo that people might be suffering from. There's also other areas within the profession to help with anyone that's struggling with their walking, and this is commonly anything to do with the brain. So anyone that might have had any brain injuries or strokes, and then the communication from the nervous system in the brain isn't quite matching with the body and the muscles. So it's certainly something that physio has a big space in, helping people retrain, learning how to get back to walk and the basic needs of the human body and the movements.
And would you say seeing a physio is more of a reactive treatment, or like most of the time, and should it always be a reactive treatment, or can it potentially be more of a proactive one as well? Because most people that I've spoken to that have seen a physio, it's usually when an injury happens, they're feeling pain and they're like, oh, I need to see a physio. Can it also, you know, can someone see a physio more for proactive reasons, so to prevent, more of as a preventative, I should say, more than a...
Yeah, definitely, Michael. It's one where majority of people are coming to physio reactively after an injury or some trauma, and then they're noticing that they're not functioning, and they get recommended to see a physio, usually either by friends or family or by their doctors. In terms of a reactive approach, it's less common that we see people that are doing it from a proactive point of view, but there's definitely a lot of benefit to that. So if people are noticing early signs that their body's not functioning as it used to, and that's sort of what we call those little warning signs. People might start to notice a little niggle, or they can't quite move as well as they previously could. They're those little warning signs that the body might be tightening up, and there might be some early interventions to prevent any injuries or aches or pains in the first place. But it's definitely less common that people know that there are ways that they can prevent injuries and just move better as well. So we do get a few people that do come in and they're aware of the importance of their health and longevity. And it might be through educational content like this, or from other videos or books that they read, and they realize that the body can improve, and that they sort of seek our expertise in ways that they might not consider improving their movement, or even just the structure of their weekly routine. And if there's any things that they can add in terms of improving their mobility, their strength, their power, just to move better.
And are there some issues are there some common issues that you find that people ignore when it comes to their bodies? Because usually my understanding is when somebody's had a pretty serious injury, let's say they're bending over to pick something up and they've hurt their back and they can't walk, or something, pretty traumatic. Usually there were some warning signs leading up to that point that person probably ignored. Are there things that you see people coming through the door with regularly that will say to you, "Oh, I've been feeling this for a while and I never did anything about it," or there are things that you know that they probably felt and potentially ignored?
Yeah, definitely. It's one where it's what I'd call a niggle. So where you're feeling some form of discomfort, and that usually isn't a sign of pain. So some people might say before they had an injury as such, or an event, that they were feeling a bit of a niggle. So there's a little child's book story that I like to tell patients, and it's the story of the farm animals going down the river. So it's one where the pig's in the boat, and that might be, again, just what people are doing. So that might be sitting down a lot at the office, and then the horse jumps in, and that might be, again, just another sign that the body's getting a little bit deconditioned. And you stack up all the different farm animals until you suddenly go to bend to pick up a pencil off the floor, and that could be the mouse jumping in the boat that sinks the boat. Whereas a lot of people go, "Oh, it's because I bent down and twisted awkwardly to pick up the pencil," but there were all the other factors that built up towards that event that sort of led to then the back pain and the back injury, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. Yes, the niggle. That makes sense, because usually that's what people say. They, "Oh, I just had a bit of a niggle and, I felt a niggle here and there." And yes, that makes so much sense. And I feel like as you're saying this, to me, I'm just literally relating this to what I do with work with people. When I see someone that has particular issues with money, where they'll sort of come to me with, some pretty serious issues that they're currently trying to deal with. And they'll tell me it's because of this. But then as we start talking, we discover that there's other things that have happened over the years, which that person didn't think was much of a big deal. But I just took that one particular thing, maybe being out of work for 2 weeks, or maybe that really big repair bill for the car that just sort of pushed things over the edge. And I feel like we need to listen to our bodies more. These niggles, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of us think we're invincible, especially when we're younger. And I feel like we ignore these niggles, and we just wait for something to happen to be like, "Oh, I need to see someone now." Because I'm guessing at that stage for you, it's obviously a lot more work, isn't it, to get that person back to where they should be?
Yeah, that's right. So usually a few early interventions, it's always the best form of cure, like we like to say. And like what you would be telling a lot of your clients, Michael, that setting yourself up early on with some good habits and some good foundational, sort of strategies. And it's the same in terms of the human body. So some of the foundational things that we like to educate most people that it's living a healthier life, and through certain types of movements and what you can incorporate into your day sets you up for good long-term success for your body and your health.
Yes. And speaking of habits, so you mentioned earlier, someone that sits a lot, for example. Can you maybe expand a little bit on that? Because years ago, I heard it was actually from an insurance company, because as advisors, we get, insurance companies always talk to us about trends and increase in claims and things that they see, from a health perspective as to why Aussies are claiming more on their insurance or having health issues and what they predict can happen in the future. And something I heard years ago was that sitting is the new smoking. Now, that's from many different areas. Like that's relating to someone, from not being as active as we should be, weight gain, many other issues that aren't just related to muscular problems. But just from a muscular perspective, if we could just talk about sitting, because I know for a fact that sitting is not good for your back, sitting all the time. And can you just expand a little bit on the risks of sitting all the time? Maybe some practical tips for those that have to sit all the time for work, things that they can do.
Yeah, definitely. There's the big one, I guess, is in terms of how the muscles are activating in a sitting position. So the human body is made for movement. So through movement, that's how we get all the nutrients through the body. So if we're not moving, we're going to be limiting the flow of nutrients throughout the body. And if you hold a static position for a long enough period of time, then you can start to build up some tightness and tension in those areas. And it's most common that then that will start to affect the neck, the shoulders, the lower back. So the biggest thing that we sort of say as physios is your next posture is your best posture. Because a lot of people sort of go, oh, but I've got the best chair, I've got the best table, I'm sitting up in the best position. And we say that's fantastic from a mechanical point of view. You're distributing the force that goes through each of the muscles and the joints as best as you can in that position, but it still doesn't beat movement. So some really practical advice that we like to tell people is to fidget. So the more that you're moving the muscles, that's going to help to keep them nice and supple and loose and prevent any of these tight spots from building in tension. And a simple way of doing that is to be able to stand up and reach for the ceiling and sit back down. It doesn't have to be an elaborate routine. A lot of people think, oh no, if I've got to avoid the sitting and mix it up, I've got to do these elaborate stretches every 5 minutes, and that's going to disrupt my flow of work, and I get so ingrained in my work. So the simple strategies of being able to stand up, reach for the ceiling, sit back down, and there's plenty of apps and technology out there as well. So there's a few people that are more tech savvy than me, but they've created these programs where you can download it onto your desktop and you can set a time interval. So every 60 minutes, you can black out the screen for a 60-second, 2-minute period of time. So you have to stop work, and then it forces you to get up, move, and change that position. So your best posture is the next posture in that movement. And the other popular, I guess, strategy that a lot of people are using now, these sit to stand desks. So we're big advocates for that because, again, it creates that movement of the body. And even now the research suggesting that a good sort of protocol for your sit to stand desk is to sit for an hour and to stand for half an hour. Because when these desks came out, it was popular. Everyone's like, oh, great, I'm going to stand all day. But standing in that one position all day would lead to other back problems, ankle and knee problems. So the best thing to do is to become a fidgeter, incorporate a bit of movement throughout the day. And if practical for people, if they can do just a short 5-minute walk in a lunch break before they get to the office, parking a little bit further away, those extra steps, that extra movement really can have a big build up over time. So like you would talk to your clients about the power of compounding and these little 1%ers, it's the same with the body and throughout the day. Those little 1%ers of doing a little bit of extra movement really can add up.
Because really, if you think about it, you buy a car, your car lasts you. How long does a car usually last? If you're lucky, a car's going to last you 30 years. Probably 15 years, they start having issues. And, we all know we need to service our cars regularly to keep them going. Our bodies, they have to last us, 80 years at least, 70, 80, maybe 100, so it makes sense that we shouldn't be ignoring certain things. And when you talk about sitting and standing, like that makes a lot of sense because standing desks came out and you're right. It was standing, standing, standing. I've got a standing desk. I still have a standing desk. I love having it, but it's when I started sitting down and standing, I realized that I actually was feeling a lot better because being in one place all the time, you're right. It's not good at all. And I love that the way you explain it, you talk about nutrients moving through the body. That's big. And even the blood flowing and the fact that if I think any position, right? Am I right? Like if you stay in any position for any period of time, it's not good, whether it's laying down or bending over or standing or sitting, so it's that movement. And am I right in saying that when you talk to your patients, you offer them a lot of practical tips as well, that they can use without you actually being there, like without actually having to go and see a physio, like self-treatment? I know I'd love to know your thoughts on not stress balls, pressure balls.
The massage balls and
Yeah, the massage balls, so I'd love to know what you think about them as well, is because I'm sure when you talk to your clients, you probably equip them with some really basic practical tips as well.
Yeah, that's right. So usually we sort of say it's the toolkit. So unfortunately, it's not like there's a one size fits all. And some people will use those pressure balls, those massage balls and swear by it and say, oh, everyone in the office needs to get one of these to help release some tension. And then other people, they'll use it and they go, this just feels awkward. It feels like it's bruising me. And so it's one of those ones where there's a lot of tools that we try and equip people to do it at home, to do a lot of self-care. So that can be ways of doing your own self-massage, whether that be with foam rollers, trigger balls, massage sticks, also doing certain stretches, depending on which areas. So we'll assess people and say, okay, it's the trapezius muscle or it's the chest muscle that needs to be stretched. So we'll arm people with certain stretches that will help with those areas. And also other exercises, so ways of improving some postural muscles. There might be muscles in the shoulders or the neck or the back that you can do with resistance bands, even at the desk. So you can do it on the go. We sort of almost try and say the dentists are very good at scaring their patients into saying if you don't brush your teeth will fall out. Whereas it's not quite for us, where if you don't move your back, your spine's going to fall out of your body. But it's one where if you can incorporate throughout the day that little trigger of having a band on your desk to then be able to do a few of these postural exercises can make you feel a lot better. And even the studies that show that getting your heart rate up when you're learning a new skill actually does enhance those memory pathways. So we usually try and educate patients that there's usually not only looking after the body, but there's actually a lot of other benefits for your immune system, your memory, your overall well-being, the endorphins that get released. You can actually improve your mental health through movement and through exercise.
And I guess just like any tools, you need to know how to use those tools, and how they can apply to certain situations. What are some misconceptions? What are some things that you see or hear all the time from people, that just aren't true? Any myths that you feel are worth busting? I know you've mentioned one, which is, it's just a niggle, and I was just bending over to pick something up and that's what injured my back. But are there any other misconceptions, or myths, things that you hear regularly from people where you're like, yeah, that's just not true, or that could be true, but it's most likely not?
Yeah, I mean, the big misconception really that we hear a lot is after people have had imaging on their body. So they'll come in and say that I'm broken, my disc has slipped out, my back has slipped out. So there are certain conditions where there will be structural changes to the body. However, it's not something that is very common and very typical. It does require a lot of trauma to actually move and shift the skeletal system. So that would be a big misconception that a lot of people, and they become really quite fearful because they sort of say, oh, I'm fragile. I can't move this tissue because it's broken and I can't move it. And a lot of our research that we notice is that with these sorts of conditions, even getting it moving is quite safe, and that pain doesn't always mean tissue damage. So a lot of people think, oh, I'm getting pain when I'm doing this movement, I must stop, it's going to cause tissue damage. Whereas if we stop using a particular part of the body, it becomes deconditioned. And when it becomes deconditioned, it's this perpetual cycle where it actually will get a little bit worse, and you'll lose the ability to use that muscle and that joint as it should. So we like to sort of use a little bit of a traffic light system for most people. And again, it does depend on the pathology and the condition, but there's a nice traffic light system where usually if your pain's a 0 to 3 out of 10 on that pain scale, where 0 is nothing and 10 is the worst, it's usually safe. It's usually a green light. You can usually push through some mild discomfort. And then if it creeps up to that sort of 3 to 5 out of 10, we sort of say, okay, that's your amber. Let's monitor and see how those symptoms progress over time. And then if it's above a 5, we usually say that's one where you must stop, and we'll have to modify and adapt and stop that movement. And we'll come up with strategies of ways to improve that tissue. But that's probably the one misconception, the one thing I really try to empower a lot of people is the body's got a great ability of adapting. And if you give it the right conditions, it can settle, it can heal, and you can improve the overall function of the body.
These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a free 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au. And how often should someone see a physio? Is it so as far as injuries are concerned, and I guess this really depends on the injury and the person, but usually how often do you see someone coming in and I guess if something's really serious, it's probably indefinitely. They need to see a physio maybe every month for the rest of their lives. If it's more of an amber, it could be just 3 or 4 sessions. Is there, just so that people listening to this that maybe haven't seen a physio know what to expect, is there some sort of guide or some sort of time frame that you traditionally see for different types of injuries?
Yeah, definitely, Michael. It's one that we work with every person in terms of what they're able to sort of do within their treatment. So we do get some people that come in for some one-off advice, that it might be something that they're really concerned because they fell down the stairs and they wanted to make sure that structurally everything is okay, and that we can do that one-off assessment. If we can do a thorough assessment and say, look, everything is all structurally well, and yes, it was a bit of a scary incident or accident, but everything structurally is sound, which is great. So it can be that sort of just reassurance in one session. For a lot of injuries and where there are structural changes in the body, it's like you said, it's very much dependent on the type of injury. But I would say on average, most of the people that come in with a niggle, that then turns into something that's stopping them from moving. Let's say it's a bit of back pain, neck pain, that's then stopping them functionally. On average, with the right physio advice, most of those conditions do settle down within 2 to 4 weeks. And we'd probably say that requires about 3 to 4 sessions in that time to settle down those types of injuries. And then if someone's recovering from a major surgery, sometimes a major surgery could be 12 months of rehabilitation. But in saying that, we might see the physio initially weekly to establish a really good program for the rehabilitation. But then we like to arm patients with the tools and the skill sets to manage it at home. And then we start to draw back on how often we would be needing to see someone. So it might start off with weekly visits, and then once they're established and they're doing really well, we push it out to a monthly review, and then even one of those ones where we might see someone again in 3 months just to make sure they're back 100% and they've reached their goals and back doing everything that they want to do. So it very much is we'll sit down and work with someone to see what they need. But on average, I'd say if it's one of those more milder injuries, it usually settles within that 2 to 4 weeks of doing the right physio advice.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because I know for a fact that you care about your clients and, your patients. And I do know for a fact as well that you're not just trying to have people in there just to charge them, to make as much money out of them. Because I think some people maybe sometimes can feel a bit worried about seeing any professional, but especially sometimes the health professionals. I think, oh, they just want me to come back so I could just keep paying them. So I think that's really important that, you focus on that, and that you focus on those tools and giving people things that they can do to help themselves recover in that time as well, and just on the topic of costs, because this is something that comes up a bit, like even when I talk to clients, even, if they're having a bad back, I'm like, well, you should probably see a physio. They go, oh, but I've heard it's really expensive. You don't need to get into cost, but because I know there's different options and different scenarios, but is it expensive seeing a physio? And I'm assuming private health, most private health covers will cover it. And is there any government support that someone can get through Medicare if they don't have private health insurance?
Yeah, of course, Michael. So, I mean, just going back onto that previous discussion, you were saying with physio, and if you're seeing a clinician that isn't giving you things to do at home, that's sort of a red flag. Like any profession, you shouldn't have someone that's wanting you to come in regularly and saying that they're going to fix you with machines and with massage. It's one that they should be arming you with tools to help manage things, to fast track it at home. And in terms of the financials, like you were just saying, it's one where there are lots of different forms of rebates. So there are item codes for physio that if your listeners have private health, they can certainly call their health fund and be able to quote what rebates they'll get from the health fund. And then most physio consults, depending on the nature of the injury, if people have multiple sites and multiple injuries, we usually allow an hour, so it's a longer session. Whereas if it's just one-off assessment, then we can do a shorter consult within 30 minutes. So on average, most physios would charge between $100 and $120 for that first consult, that first assessment. And with rebates, again, can always get that checked from the private health companies. There are other rebates out there that people can access. So if someone's injured at work, there is work cover, and work cover are quite easy to work with, and they will fund all of the physio and rehab needs. Insurance schemes, so any third-party insurance with Suncorp or anyone that does injure themselves on the road, they are eligible, and again, they will cover all of the sessions as well. The NDIS is a great scheme as well, that anyone that does need any long-term physio, they can access the NDIS, and again, that fully covers any rehab needs. Veterans, so there's DVA, the Department of Veteran Affairs. So any of our veterans, they do get their sessions covered for physio. I know some clinics do actually charge a gap on that as well. So for our clinic, we look after our veterans and they don't pay anything out of pocket. They can access gym classes and exercise classes as well to look after their overall health and well-being. And then there's also the Medicare system. So through the GP, people are eligible to claim a Medicare plan if they meet the criteria. And again, they can use that for their funding for their physio. So there's a few streams for people to access physio as well as we do see a lot of people that do pay privately without any health insurance as well.
And you mentioned some red flags earlier to watch out for, but can I ask what should somebody look for when looking for a physio? So one of the most obvious ways is probably Google reviews, but that doesn't always indicate whether somebody suits you, whether that physio can help you with it doesn't mean that physio suits your needs, because we're all different. And just from your experience, what are some things that someone can look at when they're looking for a physiotherapist?
Yeah, I think it's one where I know calling around the different clinics and speaking to the admin team can be really beneficial. So our clinic, as example, we have 7 different physiotherapists within the clinic, and each physio obviously has a specific interest and area of the body that they love to treat. So usually if someone was to call up and they spoke to our receptionist and gave a little bit of their story on what they need, our receptions are usually pretty good at saying, okay, if you're looking at a back injury or a knee injury and different demographics, then they can sort of say who they believe would be the best therapist for someone. So usually calling a clinic that has a big team, they can usually help with you and get a bit of a background, and they know their clinicians at the clinics and can usually give you some good advice. Family and friends and word of mouth obviously is a big one for us. So we get a lot of people that, have had a really good experience. And so we'll follow word of mouth from family and friends. Because like you said, it's hard on Google and reading someone's bio online to know if they're going to be a good fit for you. But that's another way that you might be able to get a bit of an insight into your therapist to see. But the big one, like I said, Michael, for physio and what we know is the best evidence to help people with longevity and with injury recovery, it's very much what we call active physiotherapy as opposed to passive physiotherapy. So the active approach, as it sounds, is you should be doing something at home, some form of exercise, some form of movement as part of your rehab plan and to get you better faster. So if you're seeing someone and all it is just passive treatment, you lie on a treatment table and they might use different tools or different machines, then we do know that that's actually going to take longer for a recovery. And it's not usually one that gives longer lasting results because it's great for temporary relief. So still something that's worthwhile if you're in acute pain to do some of those strategies just to help with that acuteness and give you some short-term relief. But it should be combined with also an active approach just to help fast track and also prevent any future issues. Because once you have one sort of area that's become painful, the body has the nervous system, which I sort of liken it to an alarm system, that it can get quite sensitive. So if you had an alarm system on and a fly flew through your living room, you wouldn't expect the alarm system to go off. But if you've had a previous injury, say it's to the lower back, and again, you go to do a movement, the nervous system might detect a threat and send pain signals, which is like that fly coming through the living room as opposed to a fallen out rubber. So that's where some of these exercises is actually retraining the nervous system to accept that movement is okay and not send those pain signals. And the best way to do that is through certain movement and certain exercises. I hope that makes sense, mate.
It does. And it's those exercises that people usually don't do when they're supposed to do.
That's right.
No, that is all very good advice, to be honest with you. That is all very good advice because I feel like a few of those things I wouldn't even have done, to be honest with you. I wouldn't even I've been to a physio before, but I would not have thought about actually calling and asking the person at the desk, hey, look, this is my issue. Is this something that someone there specializes in? Because usually a physio, like a practice, will have, a clinic will have several practitioners sometimes, not just the one, and they all focus on different areas. And on that note, can you tell those listening to this episode just a little bit about your practice, your clinic, and because you don't just do physio, you've got a few other parts of it as well. You've got a few people that specialize in different areas, and if people did want to get in contact with you, how they can do that.
Yeah, that's right. So our clinic, because we do want to focus on the overall well-being of our patients that come through. So our motto is always to have people coming in and actually leave better off than they were before their injury. So fitter and healthier, if that's something that they're interested in. So we have massage therapists that are there to help people that do just need a bit of that short-term relief from niggles. We've got 7 physiotherapists that we've all got different expertise. So if ever someone comes in that, we've got physios that are experts in knees. So if someone comes in with a bit of a trickier presentation, we always sit down each week to discuss some difficult cases. So we bounce ideas. So sometimes I like to say, if you're coming through, that you've almost got 7 brains working on the one issue. If it is something a bit more complex, we'll sit down as a team and even reach out to other colleagues and mentors that we've had in the past to help people get the best quality advice collectively. And in our clinic, we've also got a gym facility and Pilates studio. So again, big on that philosophy of improving people's ability and overall well-being. So we've got a fully functioning gym where we do take people through exercises, and even people that come through and that do want to get into exercise, but they're a bit unsure, or they've had a lot of injuries in the past and they don't feel confident stepping into a commercial gym. We get a lot of lovely people that come through and do exercises in our clinic, even in classes as well. It's a great community. So looking forward to Christmas time. There's usually a few Christmas parties from some of the classes, and it's a great community to get involved with. So some people, it's a great way for them to start their exercise journey. And so we've got an exercise physiologist as well as the physios that take a lot of those classes, and two really passionate Pilates instructors as well, which is another great form of movement and exercise, and a great way of preventing a lot of pains and improving your own mobility. So that's a bit about us and what we want to try and help people with. We see all walks of life. It's a real community vibe in Camp Hill. It's a lovely community. So we'll see, kids, parents and grandparents, which is always fantastic. And it's always interesting to see people that know each other in the waiting room as well, and a long lost friend. It's a small little community around Camp Hill and the surrounding suburbs. So it's really fortunate that we're able to serve that community. I know you mentioned about how people can get in contact with us.
That was going to be my question.
Yeah. So we do have a website as well, just Camp Hill Physio. If you pop that into Google, we'll come up. So you can book online, but like we mentioned before, call one of our friendly reception staff as well on our phone as well, which is 3398 9556. And again, they're ones that can help guide you and as well see if we can help you. And if not, whether you need to go and see another professional, whether you need to see a GP first or a specialist. Quite fortunate. We've got a few physio students and past physios on the desk as well that have a bit of knowledge that can help triage on the phone. So we always encourage people to pick up the phone, to book in and to access any of our services. But if people would prefer to, and it's easier, then there's definitely online bookings as well through the website.
That's great. And also the reason I think it's important for people to know how to contact you is just because I know a few people listening to this will be thinking, okay, yeah, I should probably see a physio, and I know we have listeners from all over Australia. So there are some that don't live in Brisbane that can come and see you, but for those that do live in Brisbane, I would highly, highly recommend Nick. And you said something earlier, Nick, which is, to me, resonated really well. And I know you were referring to the different things that you offer in the practice, but you said if that's something that they're interested in. So you mentioned if somebody wants to look at their overall health and if they want to get better, if that's something that they're interested in. And the way I take that statement as well is we have to want to help our health. We have to want to help ourselves. And I guess I talk to a lot of people that, even from a financial perspective, know they need help, but they need to be willing to want to help themselves. And I think that applies to your situation where if they need to really want to help themselves to see a physio, and that includes doing the exercises, having conversations, talking about their problem and sticking to a plan and taking on advice. Because am I right in saying that you do come across some people, and I'm just guessing, but I can almost guarantee that you come across some people that know that they want to help, so know that they need help, but aren't really that interested in helping themselves, or aren't really that interested in committing to following the plan to recover.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's some people that, again, that's the beauty of it. And like yourself, with everyone's individual circumstances, it's always an individual plan. And sometimes that plan needs to adjust on circumstances. So some people that have the time, effort and energy, they can have a different plan. And those that are really time poor, then we come up with a different plan. And it's always working with the individual to make sure that they can see that that's an achievable plan as well. Because it's all well and good for us to say we want you to exercise for 2 hours a day. But if you can't, and you've got 2 minutes, then hey, let's make the most of those 2 minutes. So it's very much about making those practical changes as well. It's not about there's a one size fits all and you must do this. And that's the beauty of it as well. And I just, yeah, really encourage people to, make these small little changes. Because like you said, it might be something that you do now, but in 30 years time, we've got one body. So the things that we do now, we really will reflect what we are able to do in 30 years time.
Yes, exactly.
And it's hard in our society for people to look at that. And I'm sure that's something that, your listeners resonate with as well. We look at, what's happening, today and this week, but if we have that longer term view, yeah, we're really setting ourselves up for success, if we get some good habits in place now.
Yeah, that's it. And also, it's not one of those things where you just go to a physio session and you walk out the door and go back to your old habits, So it's actually putting in that effort and making those adjustments as well to become better, to move better.
Yeah, and we like to try and encourage, people. I know it's something that you've covered on your podcast as well, Michael, setting goals. And so if we help to set goals, then it's really quite motivating that you're working towards something. And it can be quite empowering that you're not only trying to move away from pain or an injury, but you're also moving towards better health and being able to do things. So we really like, if again, people want to set certain goals, we find that to be a really effective way to make those changes, because it's very easy. And again, we get a lot of people that they'll come back, and sort of say, "Oh, I've slackened off with those exercises," and that happens. That's okay. And sometimes it is just a short time that you need to do that to get out of pain. And then you don't need to do them ongoing, but sometimes it is just that nice reset to set those foundations again.
Yes. No, I love that, Nick. And I love the approach that you take. And, and for anyone that's probably been to a physio that's listening to this, you've probably noticed that, I feel like you're a lot more comprehensive, and you look at things a lot more holistically than most physios. And lastly, I like to finish off my episodes off with a dad joke. So I've been looking up dad jokes that relate to muscles. I didn't understand half of them because I think they're more medical jokes than Michael Khouri jokes, but I found a good one. So how did the skeleton try to build muscle? By doing deadlifts.
Very good.
And I could have thrown out one of the medical ones and you probably would have laughed at that one, but I wouldn't have understood it. So,
oh no, having a gym background myself, Michael, I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, so we'll stick to the basics. But Nick, thank you so much for joining us. Honestly, it really means a lot to me, mate. And I'll in the description of this episode, I'm going to put your website, so a link to that, and the phone number as well to the clinic. So if anybody wants to get in contact with you or any of the staff, they can do that.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Really appreciate that. And really think you're doing a great job with this podcast as well, mate. So well done. And I know you're well over 200 episodes in now, so it's a real credit to yourself.
Thank you. It means a lot. Appreciate it. Thanks for joining us on Sharing More Than the Sheets. Please make sure you subscribe to be updated with future episode releases, and feel free to share this episode with any friends or family that you think it might benefit. Please visit us at sharingmorethanthesheets.com.au to submit questions or requests for future podcast topics. These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au.